Yeah, I'm doing 3 or 4 podcasts a day around my normal stuff. So,
A day? Wow.
yep.
Oh, that's intense. How are you finding it?
Well, we're in hardcore promotion. The book gets released next week, so or
Oh,
re-released.
that's exciting. That's the Everyday Excellence, right?
Yep,
How's it all going? Oh, that
there.
looks so good. I was looking at it on Amazon last week, and yeah, I definitely want to talk about it. It looks really interesting.
It's a lot of fun because I'm getting some really good conversations around it, and people are reaching out to me, and they're having some really good impacts on their life. So one person called me up and was like, "Hey, I stopped smoking because of this. I went and hired a hypnotherapist to help me out. I took the actions. I'm no longer a smoker." Another buddy completely stopped drinking, totally dry now. And this guy's last name is actually Boozer, so I mean, he was destined for alcohol. But I mean, so he's 61 days clean as of now. Another guy, finance buddy, called me a couple of weeks ago. He's like, I just released the MVP of a game that I've been building. Even though he's a finance guy, he's
Mm,
like, and I want you to check it out. And I did this because you pushed me in the book. I'm like, wow, that's awesome.
damn, that's so exciting. It's so awesome to have like to pour your heart and soul into something and then start getting that impact. It's so motivating. 100%. You must feel pumped.
It is. And it's those getting those messages is helps me get me through a lot of the tough stuff because Ryan Holiday, the author of Everyday Stoic and Courage is Calling and all these other ones, was talking about writing books, and he's written 12 bestsellers or something like that. And he's like, so he's also a long distance runner. You go, you write this book, and it's like you're running a marathon, and you put everything that you have into it for this entire time, and you're ready to collapse, and you cross the finish line, and you think that they're bringing you over to like the medal podium or whatever and giving you your medal and all that, and they bring you to the start of another race. And you have to go and run another marathon, and that's the editing and promoting and all that. And you're already spent, and you have very little control over this because I can do podcasts, but I can't control who listens to them. I can write supplemental stuff for the blog and put it out there. I can't control who's getting access to it. I can do the advertising and the marketing, but I have no control over how effective it is to get people to actually say my baby is pretty.
When you do stuff like writing books and podcasts and all this kind of content stuff, especially when it's a message that means so much to you, it is just throwing it out there as much as you can and hoping to God that someone picks it up and goes, "Oh, I kind of like this. Like, this is something that I'm interested in."
Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely the risk factor. But yeah, how long have you been doing this whole process?
So one of my friends asked me about the book, how long it took to come up with the idea of it, and my answer was 40 years and 40 seconds
Ooh,
because it's been 40 plus years of learning new things and exploring stuff, researching, growing, pushing myself. So, my mind's basically like a super saturated solution with too much stuff in it. But the entire concept of the book and the structure literally came to me in about 40 seconds total. I was down in my weight room. I was listening to some Black Sabbath and some Jocko Willink, throwing around
nice.
kettlebells and all that. And he made a throwaway comment about excellence. I'm like, excellence is a habit. Habits need to be practiced every day. Everyday excellence. And I had literally the Satori moment, that eureka,
Mm.
and I put down the kettlebell, ran upstairs, and brain dumped out the concept of having a quote, then discussion and analysis around it. And then the big thing that separates my book from a lot of the other daily readers out there, like Everyday Stoic or some of these other ones, is that there's an actual action item every single day, because I have a saying, words are weak, actions speak. We can
Mm,
read something that's all great and theoretical and it's stuck in your skull,
I love that.
but until you're actually applying it, you're not changing yourself nor your world. So having a directed action item every single day makes it so that the individual is doing something to improve themselves in the universe. And these action items, a lot of them are little. Like one of my favorite ones is smile at 5 people today.
Hmm.
And that's a very small thing, but when we start unpacking it, for example, when you smile, it reduces your cortisol levels. So it reduces your stress. So it actually slows down the aging process for your body. When you smile, it also increases your dopamine, and so you're slightly more intelligent and productive for the next 5 to 10 minutes. If you're smiling at somebody else, what you're doing is that you're activating the mirror neurons in their neocortex. So they want to smile back. So when I smile at you, Mike, you want to smile. All of a sudden, I've given you the gift of increased productivity, increased health,
Hmm.
and happiness for a couple of moments. Now, how's that going to play throughout your day? I mean, this could kick off because of the positive biochemical effects that you have. Your day is going to be slightly better, and how that could impact somebody else completely. And so
Hmm.
we get these little ripple effects, like the butterfly flapping its wings, but instead of creating a tsunami of destruction, you can create a tsunami of good. And so that action item, which literally takes 30 seconds to do throughout the day, could have tremendous impact on the individual and on other individuals that they might not even realize. So that's one of the cool things about creating a book like this is that I'm creating pockets of good and contributing to increases in people's success and along multiple parameters all across the world that I will never interact with. That's pretty awesome, actually.
It's actually mind-boggling. I love what you say about the butterfly effect. That's such a big part of what I do personally, and obviously what you're doing. Like we were saying before, when you're putting content out there, you're literally sowing the seeds, throwing these little nuggets of wisdom out there. You never know if they're going to grow into a field, but you're doing it out of the faith that that they will. And obviously, when you get people come back and you get that proof, like it's groundbreaking stuff, and I really love what you said about having the actionable takeaways in there. I've got Daily Stoic. I think it's on the bookshelf down there. Oh yeah, it's just on the end. And like you said, it misses that actionable bit of actually actually having like a lot of people can read stuff and go, oh, that makes a lot of sense. That resonates with me. Cool,
Right.
it's done. But actually having that takeaway is really
Yeah,
powerful.
exactly that. It's done. And so it's a pen and ink philosopher in a lot of
Mm,
ways, as opposed to actual application. And so, I mean, I actually do a shout out to Ryan Holiday as in a thank you in the
mm,
book, and I quote Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus and Seneca. I mean, I probably quote Stoics 30 or 40 times throughout the year, in addition to some of those modern Stoics like Jocko Willink and
mm,
Admiral Stockdale, people like that. So that's one component of it. And the book is very free flowing. As I say, it's sort of like James Joyce Ulysses, in that every day leads into the next day a little bit, but it doesn't directly impact it through the book.
mm,
So there's no big overarching themes month by month that like Robert Greene's The Daily Laws
mm.
has or anything like that. Today influences tomorrow, but it's not completely bound to it. That influences the next day. Plus, there's some days where, of course, I have a quote that is sort of specified for that day or really harmonizes with it. So, like on Valentine's Day, I have a talk about a quote about love from Arnold Schwarzenegger, talking about loving what he does.
Mm.
On International Talk Like a Pirate Day, of course, I have a pirate quote. Or St. Patrick's Day, there's a quote about being Irish. Or on Star Wars Day, May the 4th, of course, I had to quote Yoda.
I love that.
I'm a geek. I mean, you can see I've got my Avengers Quinjet over my head that my kid built,
Oh
and you can
yeah.
see like Thor comic books and things like that, and good old Stitch here. He's my you
Oh,
know
adorable.
spirit
My
animal.
spirit animal. I love that. I absolutely love that. Just the embracing it as well. I mean, it's beautiful. Have you seen are you a fan of the new thing that's come out, the moon is it Moon Knight on Marvel?
I have not seen series because I don't watch a lot of TV, but I actually have the first edition that Moon Knight came on out with. I
Whoa.
actually loved him because he is such a fractured, damaged human being
Mm.
and still tries to do good in the world in a lot of ways. And ultimately, that's what we're all trying to do. We're all broken in some capacity or multiple
That's
capacities.
true.
We're just trying to put ourselves together and hopefully we can find other people whose weird interacts with ours well, like sort of like a jigsaw puzzle,
Mm.
or their brokenness meshes well with our brokenness so that together we can be approaching a whole.
Wow. When I brought up Moon Knight, like I said, I watched it fresh yesterday, and hearing that as a metaphor for life, I'm like, oh shit, like that, that's game changing.
The other
Love
thing
it,
that I
Tom.
saw is be like the moon.
Mm.
Be like the moon. Even if you're not whole, if you're not full, you still have value. I mean, the moon still affects the tides of the world and it still reflects light and it's still there and you can feel it.
Mm.
And so, even when we are not at our full brightness, we still have value.
I've literally got shivers. Holy, that's so beautiful. I absolutely love that. That's gold, man. That's absolute gold.
See, this is why I love conversations like this, Mike,
Mm.
because we just can go off on these random things, but it's the ability to look at the universe and see and find these different components. As Steve Jobs said, you can't look forward to see the pattern. You have to look back to connect the dots.
Mm.
And one of the things my father has always taught me is look for the pearls in any situation. Those pearls of wisdom, those pearls of excellence. Because if you can find enough pearls, you can string them together and have a very rich life.
That's so cool. That's so true as well. Oh man, I'm absolutely loving this. I'm feeling so pumped up just listening to you speak. Just kind of out of curiosity, what does excellence? How do you define excellence? Because in my head, I have this image of it being like almost near perfection, but I feel like you may have a different view.
Well, here's the thing excellence is sort of like happiness in that it is very, very personal. So, you, one of the things that I want people to try and do is have a better understanding of what excellence means to them and work towards it. So, for me, excellence is similar to happiness in that you are progressing towards something meaningful and it is carrying over in other capacities. So, excellence, the Greek have a term arete,
Hmm.
where it's sort of like discipline in some capacities, in that, I hate making my bed, but I make my bed. Um, I don't like running, even though I'm an ultra runner, but I do it because of what it gives me. I don't always want to sit there and do the detail stuff for
Hmm.
work, but I do it because of the professional pride that comes on out. So unless it's something that's going to be discarded in 30 seconds, like, the cheeseburger that I'm going to slam down my throat later or something like that, I have a responsibility to the people who helped raise me and to the people who are looking to me for example to do the best that I can associated with things. And in every situation that we have, we can look at like we're going to have two potential paths.
Hmm.
There's lots of different choices, but they basically break down to two things. There's the easy way, which tends to feel good in the moment, but leads to worse outcomes and worse decisions. So, for example, instead of studying for the test, you sit there and you play video games.
Hmm.
It feels good in the moment, but then you fail the class. It's eating the five donuts. I love donuts. Oh God, do I love donuts? But it's eating the five donuts because it makes you feel good in the moment, but you get diabetes down the road.
Hmm.
It's sitting on the couch watching the TV show instead of going out and running. It is not having the difficult conversation with your crush. So you're like, oh, whatever, you paper it over, and it leads to eventually the relationship declining or disappearing. Versus the harder choices, which are generally the right choice. It's going to be more difficult in the moment, but it's going to lead to better outcomes and a potential upward spiral. So that is getting up and going for the 5K run.
Hmm.
Yeah, it might suck. I mean, I'm recovering from a leg injury, and it hurts actually doing it, but it makes me better. It's cracking the books and studying so that you can get in the better job. It's having that difficult conversation with another person saying, hey, honey, I love you dearly, but you're making bad choices.
Mm.
And so it is doing the more difficult things, but ultimately it leads you in an upward direction. And so you can make different choices down the road. The sort of choices that I could make in my 40s compared to when I was fresh out of school and just building my career were very different because I made those early difficult choices. So, for example, I can choose, all right, am I going to run a marathon or am I only going to run the half marathon versus the choice of, am I going to be able to walk around the block and, like cough up my lungs or
Mm.
not because of the choices that came previously. So, you can always change your future at any particular day. As the old saying goes, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. Next best one is today.
Mm.
You can literally change the future curve of your life at any particular day, any particular moment. But it is, if you've made really good ones, then you're already operating at a higher level. If you made bad ones, it's going to take a while to get back up to ground zero, but you can still do it. It's going to be work. You're going to have difficulty no matter where you are. If you take the easy route now, you're going to have difficulty down the road. If you take the hard route now, you're going to have it. It's not going to be easier, but you're going to have greater tolerance and greater strength down the road. And so you
Mm.
can do more significant things. But that all comes down to our personal choices on a regular basis.
What do you think defines whether or not you will choose between the easy choice and a hard choice? Because I'm sure we've both been in situations where we go for the easy choice. I know myself, it's still something I'm definitely working on. Definitely, when I was younger, it was way easier, or I was more inclined to make the easier choice. Do you understand why that kind of is?
Part of it is because we don't connect the easy choice with the outcome necessarily. When you're 17 years
Mm.
old and eating the cheeseburger, there is no negative outcome from it. I mean, at 21 years old, we could all drink until 4 o'clock in the morning, roll out of bed at 7 a.m. and be, okay.
Mm.
It's the instant that you get your first big hangover that you're like, oh, I can't do that. It's the instant when you have the responsibility of being at the meeting for work at 8 a.m. that and you're feeling pretty green where you're like, ooh, I can't do that. So it's having that sort of feedback loop and the capability to look down the road and say, ooh, this choice now is going to have a bad outcome in the future. The capability of making that choice comes from experience, whether it's watching other people
Mm.
or it's getting smacked in the face yourself. So when you're 18 years old and you could date anybody, you know you you know kissing the girl that you're not supposed to be kissing because you're already dating somebody else, the downside of that's not too huge. What if you're 44 years old and you're married and you have kids and you're kissing the wrong person? Well, you
Yeah.
know what, then there's pretty significant different uh, situation. So it's being able to say and project from that point. There's a bad movie from the 1990s, Time Cop,
Mm.
with Jean-Claude Van Damme. And I use it as an example in the book where the politician, the bad guy, comes back and talks to his present self,
Mm.
15, 20 years earlier. And he's like, and lay off the candy bars because this guy's got diabetes and heart problems at
Mm.
that point. So if we could have our future self come back and talk to our current self and say, hey, that's not a good choice, or you should be doing this, that's going to allow us to make the harder but better choice overall. So that might come from seeing one of our older friends or relatives going through some situations and interpolating from it. I mean, if you have a relative that has lung cancer, guess what? That's going to scare you away from smoking.
Mm.
That's the exact situation. My mom was a 2 pack a day smoker forever. My older brother was a smoker. When my mom got lung cancer, my brother stopped smoking. And that was 10 years ago.
Mm. Yeah. Makes sense.
So that's the sort of thing that can frighten you into making the better choice. Or it's the micro feedbacks of this did not go quite so well. That's not going to help me. And that comes from, as I said, experience, either your own or watching other people's.
That's cool. I really like that, and I think what you said about like with the book that you've been writing, with other books, with podcasts and everything, you're kind of people who read and watch this kind of thing are putting themselves in a better position to then notice when they're faced with those kind of decisions. I know when I was younger, less experienced, I wasn't as
Hmm.
observant as I was now at all. Like when it came to smoking, drinking, drugs, all that sort of thing. It was like a free for all buffet of just easy choices, which is
Exactly, because the consequences were deferred long enough that they were disconnected in your mind.
that's true. So, what sort of experience did you have when you were younger? Because this obviously comes from a place that you've been through, and it's like your driving force. And I would love to hear more about it.
Well, I was severely asthmatic as a kid. So at 10 years old, I was actually dead. That sort of changes your perspective on things a little bit.
How do you mean dead?
Like dead, like, lying there, floating out my body, seeing the white light, hearing the big deep voice, heart stopped, no breathing, that sort of
Wow,
dead.
wow. I've got asthma myself. I've been in hospital, like intensive care units, a couple of times, but it never got to the point where I think it was close. I think one of them was like severely low. It was like oxygen percentage is supposed to be. I think they keep you in hospital in the UK, especially if it's under 93. I think the lowest mine got was like 90 or 98 or something
Hmm.
like that. So like kind of hovering on that line. What was that experience like?
So I was 10 years old. My mom brought me to see Doc Murray,
Mm,
and I'm lying there on the table. And back then, like, we didn't have the puffers that people have now. They
mm,
had to have, like, adrenaline shots or like this, stuff, and they'd put you in oxygen tents in the hospital. So I missed like over half that school year because I was in the hospital and everything.
wow.
And I'm having a really bad asthma attack. And all of a sudden, I'm floating out of my body, and Doc Murray literally became like an octopus. He had like 10 arms, doing everything, and I'm floating on up, and I hear the light and the big deep voice. Not yet time. Bang! I'm back down my body, having trouble breathing. I go to the hospital, and from that moment on, I've been just unbelievably driven. I was always hyperactive before then. I mean, it's a good thing they didn't diagnose us with ADHD back in the 70s, but I, from that point forward, as my friends say, I burn the candle at both ends and in the middle. So,
Mm.
we've got 86,400 seconds in a day. I don't care if you're Bill Gates, the Queen of England, or a kid in college. How are you going to maximize those? And remember that you don't get to bank them today to use them tomorrow.
I think that's definitely an important one to remember. Um, it's like when it's gone, it's gone. It's a hard realization to have, especially at a young age. Like how old, if you don't mind me asking?
I am 3019.
30, 3019. Oh, okay. Sorry, good maths. Um,
You go 38, 39, 3010, 3011.
yeah, we'll just hang in that middle. I like that. It's that's really it's really a profound way to look at it because even at the age I'm 28, and it's still such a surreal. I think I'm coming into the stage of my life where I'm starting to realize that that's the case. Where when you're younger, it just kind of all
Hmm.
blurs together into one continuous thing, and then you're like, "Oh shit! Like I've actually got time. Time is ticking." Like, um,
Yeah.
that sounds incredible experience though, especially being driven. So from your asthma attack, you were in the hospital. I'm guessing. How long were you in the hospital for? Did they start like treating and eventually it
For
passed? I'm guessing.
for that one, I don't even remember. I don't know, maybe 4 days, maybe 5 days.
Hmm.
As I said, at that point, I spent a lot of the time in the hospital. So I was this
Yeah.
scrawny kid. I mean, I could not run at all. I probably could do like 5 push-ups.
Hmm.
So I was useless physically in a lot of ways.
What happened from there? So you've just come out of this experience.
I said, basically, suck it up and go, which was one of my mom's favorite phrases to us.
Hmm.
So I just kept pushing it. And the story of Johnny Weissmuller, the Olympic swimmer who later on played Tarzan. He was severely asthmatic too in the 20s and 30s, and he used swimming to overcome it. If you look over my head here, I got my good old Teddy Roosevelt. Teddy Roosevelt was severely asthmatic. Now, his doctor actually prescribed cigars and whiskey for him, so slightly
Wow.
different story. But as his father said, TR, you've got the brain, but you don't have the body. And so they started pushing him, and he started doing gymnastics and calisthenics and all that. And he ended up becoming, this incredibly macho,
Mm.
almost legend from using his willpower to build his body. And so I have a saying that there's two real components to success: skill set and will set. And will set
Mm.
is by far the most important because it is what drives you to be able to still be doing podcasts at 10 o'clock at night, to crack the books and study over and over again, to run the miles, to get up in the morning and do the stuff, to stick to the diet. Whatever it is that you're wanting to accomplish, will set is what's going to determine whether you can do it or not. I mean, I'm an ultra marathon runner. I'm not a good runner. I'm not fast. I don't look like a deer. I look more like a shambling, broken down pirate. Sound like one too, in a lot of ways. But I can do these very, very long distances simply because I refuse to give up. I have willpower and I put myself in a position to develop more willpower on a regular basis. So last year, probably around this time when I was getting ready and training and everything, there was a storm coming on in. And I'm like, okay, I'm done with work. I can sneak on out. It's
Mm.
going to rain. Oh, maybe I'll just go run the treadmill. I'm like, no, I'm going to go run in the rain. And this is going to suck. I'm going to hate it, but it's going to make me better. And it
Mm.
did suck. It was cold and raining and windy. And I went out and ran 5 kilometers. My feet are squishing and it's gross. But when I got done, I knew I had done something difficult that would give me more reserves for at some point down the road when I needed it.
Mm. I really like that. That's powerful, especially when you've, like you said, you're putting yourself in a position where you're gaining more and more tolerance every time you do it. I suppose, like, even hearing you speak about how determined you are makes me feel motivational. On my to-do list, I've got to go for a run after this, and I'm looking outside like, it's a bit cold. It looks like it's raining. Maybe just pass it off, do it tomorrow or something like that.
It's going to suck and it's going to be great when you're done.
Yeah, that's true. It does always feel great when it's done. I suppose was this will set that you had, this ability to be disciplined, this ability to push yourself. Did that come from being 10 and being so close to death, or even passing death, and then coming back, or is it something that you've had to hone like over the years?
Well, that's sort of the nature nurture question, and the answer is both. So I've always had a pretty competitive spirit, even if
Mm.
I didn't have the athletic capability to go with it. But I love challenge, and so some of my friends say I'm actually addicted to challenge, which may or may not be a good thing, but it merely is. And so I utilize it. And so if I need to try and accomplish something for work or in another arena, I put the challenge out there in some capacity. And I look at, okay, what's the biggest, hairiest, most aggressive goal that I can do here? What's going to drive me? What's going to excite me? What's going to scare me?
Mm.
And that then becomes much more meaningful. So, like on the book, I could say, all right, yeah, I want to sell, 50,000 copies, which is enough to be a successful author. But I'm like, no, I want to make New York Times bestseller list. I want to sell 1 million copies of this so I can reach 10 million people.
Mm.
And putting your mindset around that is just completely different than scraping by. So for your listeners who are going into business, let's say that they're going into real estate sales. Okay,
Mm.
how do you sell $10 million worth of real estate a year? Instead of saying, "Oh, I'm going to sell, make like 10 or 20 sales," multiply that by five. 10x it, as Grant Cardone would say. Put your mindset around doing something tremendous and figure
Mm.
out how to do that because that's going to motivate you more than just barely scraping by.
It's definitely difficult though. Like if you say I want to get on the New York Times bestseller list and you have I want to sell 10 million copies. when you've say you've been working on it for 5 months, 6 months, a year, and you're maybe topping say 100 or 1,000 copies or 5,000 copies, it's definitely difficult to stay motivated during those times. Like, how do you navigate those kind of obstacles, which are
Absolutely.
definitely mental obstacles?
Well, I go back to the story of the bricklayers, and
Mm,
there's two bricklayers in medieval France. There in Paris, and they're laying bricks, and a woman comes by, Monsieur, what are you doing? And the one's like, I'm laying bricks. And the other one's like, I am building a cathedral that will reach the heavens and last for 1,000 years, that people will be talking about and coming to worship and see from all over. Okay, they were both laying
wow.
bricks. Who's going to be happier? Who's going to do a better job? Who's going to have a longer tenure doing it? Who's going to feel better? It's the guy with the
Mm,
better attitude. So, my goal, as I said, is to New York Times and 10 million, a million copies of the book and reaching 10 million people through podcasts and all these other things. Am I there
mm,
yet? No. But I'm adopting the attitude of what does it take and what do I need to do to get there? 6-year old Cassius Clay was champion of the world in his mind. At 22 years old, he knocked out Sonny Liston and then changed his name to what everybody knows him as, Muhammad Ali.
mm,
The other example I use is 10-year-old Derek Jeter was captain of the New York Yankees in his mind. And at 22, he was wearing the pinstripes and winning World Series. And by the time he was in his late 20s, he was the captain of the New York Yankees. So
mm.
have that goal, have that belief system, and figure out what do you need to do. So I know that if I want to reach this goal, I need to write so many articles and blogs. I need to be on so many different podcasts to get my exposure. I need to have, the marketing and media on Facebook and Google and all these other things. I need to be doing things like that. So I know I want to achieve this, but I need to go and grind and I need to do all these daily things. Dustin Moskovitz, one of the co-founders of Facebook, was asked, how does it feel to be an overnight success? And his response was, overnight. If that means working day and night every single day, every single week for 7 years, yes, it was an overnight success. So it's like that band that blows up. I heard an example the other day about the Beatles, and they were not this come from nowhere suddenly succeed. They were playing these dive bars in Germany six
Mm.
nights a week for 5, 6 hours a night to
Just
get their
grinding.
chops and build these things. So yeah, with the internet and all the social media, there's the opportunity to go viral potentially, but
Mm,
that is the exception as opposed to the rule. Anybody who's been successful in almost anything has been that band that's toured inside their van and grounded on out. It's the author sitting there like one of the infinite monkeys pounding away over and over and over again. It's the salesperson picking up the phone 100 times a day.
mm.
It is the uh, athlete who just repeats and practices and is up at 4 o'clock in the morning and all that. So yeah, they might make it to the big leagues, but it's a 15-year process to get there. And too often people are like, oh, I'm just going to go on TikTok and I'll be a millionaire.
And even if you want to be a millionaire, say on TikTok, for example, like it is still your life is being dedicated to these purposes, these missions that you're setting yourself, like these values. Yeah, like, I love all the stories that you put in there. I think there's ones like I think it's Kobe Bryant, and he would like the day before a final, he's sitting in the gym 4 o'clock in the morning, just shooting hoops constantly over and over. Um,
Yep.
Jim Carrey as well. Jim Carrey wrote the $10 million check to himself, and, like put it in his wallet.
Yes,
And
that's a
like
great example.
I love that one. Like that mindset. It's yeah. What did he do? He put $10 million check in his wallet in like '85, and said, and he dated it for 10 years in the future, and then 10 years to the month, I think it was. He got a contract for Dumb and Dumber,
He
which
got
was
a
like a
$10
ten
million
million dollar
check
contract.
for one of his movies. Yeah. So an example, like as a martial artist, in talking about this visioning and bringing it to fruition, My first major tournament that I ended up winning, I trained every single morning. I'd get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, train for an hour and a half before going to work. I'd work, my 10-hour day, go, I would train again, and then I would
Mm.
study afterwards. So I was training, 3, 4 hours a day around working full time, doing stuff on the weekends. And while I was going to sleep and when I was waking up every single night, I envisioned myself winning that tournament with an instant hook kick to the individual's head. Whoop, just like that. For
Just like
six
that.
months, not only was I doing the physical training, but I was doing the mental training. And when it came time for the last fight of the tournament, while I'm fighting for the grand championship, I've got a 2-1 lead. They say fight,
Mm.
foot comes up, boom,
Done.
executed exactly how I had envisioned it. And my mom was walking into the tournament at that point. My mom never wanted to see me fight. This is the only tournament she ever came to. She came on in, saw the technique, and heard them say, "Point, match, winner, champion."
Champion.
So she's like, "Okay, I don't
Damn,
need
the
to see you
feeling of
fight
that as
ever
well.
again." But Dr. Julie Bell is a sports psychologist, and she works with a lot of people in business too. And she talks about this visualization. And
Mm.
there's a lot of studies out there that say that if you just practice in your mind properly, like really focus on it and everything, you're getting essentially the same benefits of doing it physically. And if you do both physically and mentally, that is the edge of a champion overall.
Just putting yourself into that mindset as clear as you can. Do you have a process when it comes to visualizing?
Not
Because I
even the
know
mindset, in the moment, okay? You need to make your body on a psychosomatic basis be living that experience.
as in right
And so
here,
it's not,
like
so I felt my foot coming up. I felt the instant hook kick. I felt the rush of that moment over and over and over again in my mind and in my body. So when it came time to execute, when it came reality, I just replicated it.
that makes a lot of sense. And you've already, like you said, you've already gone through this so many times. Damn, it's so powerful. I've heard a lot about visualization and the process of, like you said, like almost faking it till you make it. Like all the examples begin Jim Carrey, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Kobe Bryant, the rest of the like fighters, even yourself. It's do you know how you're able to get such a vivid image? I know for someone or people, myself included, it's like all well and good hearing these like the techniques, but when it comes to shove, it's so easy to have those little anxieties kind of creep in, those little doubt like, oh,
Yep.
what if he does this? What about if he dodges? What if he ducks? And all that kind of tension, like
A
standing in
lot
your
of
own way.
it, yeah, it comes down to practice. I mean, my Taekwondo master taught me something years before Malcolm Gladwell came out with the 10,000 hour rule. He told me that you need to do a technique 100 times to do it, 1,000 times to understand it, and 10,000 times to master it.
Mm, 10,000,
Okay.
10,000.
So, I've done literally tens of millions of punches in my life. I still get up every single morning. I do the most basic punch that was taught almost 40 years ago, horse stance center punch. I still do it 100 plus times each hand every single morning, going back to the absolute basics. So, with this mental practice, we need to program our brain. We all have what's called the reticular activation system, which is basically the software in our head.
Mm,
And we can program it. So there's a lot of things that you can do around this. So, for example, when I'm working with business people, salespeople particularly, I make them write out their ideal language. Okay.
mm,
And then we tweak it and everything. I make them read it out loud so it sounds like them in terms of the verbiage and the cadence and all that. And I make them practice it 10 times a day, every single day. And they are have to say it, so they're developing the muscle memory so that
mm,
at some point they just open their mouth and it happens. But I also make them record it on their phone. This is one of the best things about having cell
mm.
phones these days, because we used to have like little recorders, and I had like a tape deck in my car back in the 90s and to do this. But I listen to my ideal language in my business every single day, multiple times. So
That's cool.
I reached the point of unconscious competence with that. Same way that I have with throwing the instant hook kick or throwing that punch, or when I'm actually doing a podcast, sometimes people are like, "Oh, say that again." I'm like, "I don't remember what I said because I've assembled it from the fundamentals, but I've done it so often that you get to the point where you don't even know what you know and you're reaching true mastery and flow with it." So
Mm.
programming your mind is the same way. So there's always going to be these little doubts until those doubts have no place to live because the mind is just completely filled with the positive and the details and all that. So if you just keep repeating and repeating and repeating what you need to know, like the perfect language in your sales situation, or the feeling of doing something right, or overfilling your head with different concepts and everything, like I talked
Mm.
about earlier, being a super saturated solution. If you're doing that, then there's no place for this negativity to creep on in.
That's powerful. That you're. It sounds like you're literally taking your mind and your body as a tool, and you're saying, right, this is my tool. There's
Yep.
definitely issues with thoughts, emotions. Like we're like, oh, we are our thoughts. We're our negative thoughts. We're our anxious thoughts. Whereas you're literally taking control, like you would a hammer or a screwdriver, and saying, I need this to do a job for me. Now I'm going to do it.
Right. And sometimes you have to hammer it. And one of the things that you're doing is if you've got these processes going on in your head, it's like on
Mm.
your computer. You can have some of these negative processes running in the background, but if you go through and occasionally use your antivirus to wipe it out, if you go through and sometimes delete things that you don't need there, and if you're running these other systems that are truly being utilized, whether it's data mining or you're mining Bitcoin on the side, or you're doing searches, or you're playing some audio very lightly in the background while you're doing other things, you're not even noticing it. It's allowing you to maximize the utilization of those systems. So
Mm.
going back
That's
to that 86,400 seconds you have per day, you know, if you can eliminate some of these negative things, then you're able to maximize overall. The average person has between 40,000 and 80,000 thoughts per day, and
sounds
we make about
exhausting.
10,000 micro decisions. Roughly 75% of our thoughts are repetitive.
Mm.
So if we can structure the environment to make those repetitive thoughts be ones that point us up as opposed to down, going back to our previous example of the arrows, then we're going to be better off. Those decisions that we make, whether they're better or worse, as Colossus tells Deadpool in Deadpool 2, 4 or 5 moments. 4 or 5 moments determine whether you're going to be a hero or not. For the average person like us, lacking superpowers, it'd be really cool to have superpowers, but that's beside the point. 4 to 5 micro choices a day determine whether that day is pointing up or pointing down, whether it's a good day or a bad day. So how do we, change those couple of micro decisions each day to have a better output? That's really what you need to do. And excellence is a compounding factor. In fact, the new dust cover for the hardcover that's coming out has a nonlinear growth curve of excellence. So
Mm.
if you can get that compounding effect of being just a little bit better again and again and again, it stacks in a major way. Same way that if you're ranking up in the martial arts, or you're running longer distances, or you're getting better playing guitar, okay, you're building off these other things, and you can
Mm.
get this nonlinear growth over time by having these better micro decisions on a regular basis.
What kind of decisions are you talking about when you say micro decisions? Like how micro are we going?
So let's start with something really small. So let's say that you want to improve your health.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's a good
Do
one.
you have crisps in the house or not? Because
Mm.
if there's no crisps, then you can't grab the crisps, or chips for the people in the United States. You can't grab them and eat them. So you're going to make a micro decision for better health.
Mm.
That's just a
That's
little thing.
good point.
This is the reason why we remove alcohol from the home of alcoholics. This is why
Mm.
I tell people, hey, if you've got an app on your phone that takes you to places that you shouldn't be, delete the app because it removes temptation. You don't even need to use any of your mental or physical energy if the choice is just completely eliminated. So
Hmm.
start by eliminating bad choices. And bad choices could be that one friend that, is a lot of fun, but keeps you out drinking until 4 o'clock in the morning. Maybe don't spend quite so much time with them. So then you're making not as many bad decisions. There's a saying from my fraternity, make the less bad choice. So if we
Mm.
can reduce the bad choices by using nudge theory, which is actually what Thaler got the Nobel Prize in economics for, is setting up
Mm.
the situation so that your choices are better overall.
So
Then
that's
you can make those couple of better decisions per day, get the positive reinforcement, and then you can make a couple of better ones, the next week, the next month by, again, changing your environment a little bit.
I really like that approach because I know lots of people in my sort of circles, myself included, it's so easy to say, like you said, you want to sell a million copies of your book, you want to get 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, you want to quit smoking, all these little things. They seem like really far off big goals, but when you break it down and you're like, okay, well, I need to write a book, I need to write for 5 minutes this morning, I'm going to
Right.
leave my
When
book.
I was writing the book, I wrote every single morning. I'd write at least 2 days worth of the book. I used
Mm,
habit stacking from James Clear to set it up so that I'd be able to do that. But for example,
it's a great
like
book.
if people want to read my book every single day, you know what? Put it in your bathroom. Okay? Yeah, I'm
Mm.
not going to be offended that it becomes shiterature. It's fine. All right? If you're going to, because you're going to use the bathroom every day, that's
Yeah.
a daily habit. Go ahead, read my book then. I don't care. It's not going to offend me that you're reading it while you're sitting on the toilet, as long as you're reading it and improving your life. So
Mm.
set it up so that your default is success as opposed to failure.
I love it. I love the passion in what you say as well. Like it's obviously so tried and tested. Whether you're educating yourself, doing your ultra marathons, writing your book, like it's just these processes over and over again, honing your skills. Just not even like having the big goals, but breaking them down into those tiny, manageable little chunks. It's powerful. It's really powerful. I got shivers.
And I'm ADHD. I mean, I would be like chasing squirrels and eating donuts and, all this other stuff if left to my own designs. But I designed my environment to set me up for success. Little things like, okay, here's my card with the four most important things I need to achieve today. So I
Mm,
write them down so that I have this, and I go through and I make sure that they get checked off. So these are the big things. The little things tend to take care of themselves around that. But I
mm,
know when I'm done with that, I have actually accomplished stuff for the day, and I get that, you know, glee, that positive reinforcement. So that's a little thing that I use. When I had to write every single morning, I used habit stacking. So I'd get up, I'd have my half cup of coffee, and I'd turn on the coffee pot because I
mm,
had prepped it so it's ready to go. I would sit down, brain dump what was ever in my brain because, when you sleep, you process stuff. I would read the Daily Stoic. I would read for a couple of moments on other things. That'd go
mm,
work out for 20 minutes, including doing those punches that I said. Then I would sit down and I would write because then my brain was fully activated. I would write minimum 2 days. Some days it'd be more, some days it'd be less. Some days it was absolute crap and I'd have to scrap 75% of it. Some
mm,
days it was actually
agreed.
sort of decent, but that was the habit. And I did that every single morning so that my day was set up to be successful from that point. So if you set the environment to lead you to be having better choices, better decisions, better outcomes, then over time you're going to be more successful. And then you just tweak how you have things set up. You learn what works for you because we're all different human beings. As my Taekwondo instructors, one was 6'3" and a complete and total badass, and the other one was 5'5" and still at almost 80 years old, he bench presses 500 pounds. Neither of
Jesus.
them are me. So I had to set my stuff up in my way that works for me.
Mm.
And when I mentor younger individuals, it's like, understand what works for you, try things from other people, but we need you to be the best possible version of you as opposed to a poor clone of me.
Like sort of use emulation of someone else's stuff just to figure out the basics, and you go, "Oh, I actually quite like this." Now and tweak and tweak and tweak. That's quite
Yep.
exciting. I really love this approach, and like from the sounds of it as well, it's not like, oh, I've got to run, I've got to look after myself, I've got to eat healthy, all this thing. It's like I'm excited to put the like to try and error these things out. I'm excited to see what works, what doesn't work. There's definitely joy in
Right.
it.
And so some of the things that I do, I don't necessarily enjoy them, but I know that it
Mm,
makes me better. And so there's a saying that glory is on the other side of pain. I'm willing to do the little things that I don't enjoy if I can see that there's something bigger and better on the far side.
mm,
And so it is that capability to see that that leads to the better decisions, the arrow pointing up versus arrow pointing down. And
mm.
very often, if you've read Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow, which was again
Mhm.
Nobel Prize winning
Great book.
economic stuff, it's everybody wants what the fast thought, which feels good in the moment. It's pause for a second and see what if I do that, what's going to be the outcome? And if you
Mm.
do that on a regular basis, it becomes a habit that then allows you to, again, make those slightly better choices.
Those macro choices. I love it. I love it. I love how you put it in such a simple way. I feel like a lot of my audience, especially, and myself, we are in the process of like trying to figure these things out. And it's obviously, it can almost be information overload. And you put it in such a simple way where it is just take responsibility, break things down, nice and slow. Like I think we all know on a deep level what is good and what is bad. Sometimes we'll falter off that a
Yep.
little bit, but generally we will like we know what's good for us. It's just taking that pause to be not be so impulsive. It's really excellent stuff, man. It's really really excellent. Do you ever struggle with anything like burnout? Because it sounds like you're on all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, I am on all the time. And like, um, I work 15, 17-hour days very often. As I said, I burn the candle at both ends and in the middle. So
Yeah, I
one of the
suppose.
things that I do is I switch things up. So I'll do 3 or 4 podcasts in a day. I'll do a couple coaching sessions. I'll take time to write because I write every day and make sure I get my workouts in every day. But sometimes you just have to say, I'm unplugging. So next week, I'm taking Friday off and I'm going to the family cabin with my kids. I'm just literally cutting myself out from everybody. No, no
Mm,
phone calls, no podcasts, and having that you can look forward to is something that's very
mm,
important. So one of the things that I tell people is that every 6 weeks or so, take a half day, go do something, have something that you can look forward to so that you get the ramp up of looking forward to it and make sure that your schedule is such that there's no drop off so that the next day when you come back to work, you're instantly fully back into it. Don't say, oh, I need
that's
to
cool.
ease back into it. That's the worst thing. Jump right back into it, full fledged.
Yeah.
Run hard to the tape, enjoy the beer and everything in the after party, and then run hard again. If you're in a relationship, have at least one date a week. This is a mistake that I made. So, learn from my example. Have at least one date per week. No kids, nobody else. Focus on that significant other, that special person. Okay.
What?
And
Mm,
have a date with yourself on a regular basis.
that's
Whether
nice.
it's, I'm just going to go watch a movie, or I'm going to read something that's not work related, or I'm going to go to the park and, make fun of stupid people for a half hour. If that's what you need to do to reconnect and decompress, do it.
That's cool. I think that's powerful, especially balancing, like you said, with your relationships. That's a big one where you spend time with your kids, you spend time with your wife, you spend time with yourself. Like you're getting balance across the board. Do you ever, what would do you ever get like a feeling or some sort of, as I say, a feeling that when you're like kind of burning the candle a little bit too close to your fingers, and you're like, I have to do this now, like because it must be tempting with so much momentum to keep going.
Right. And so one of the things, this is that meta cognitive awareness, you realize when you're getting to that point and having somebody tell you, there's an old saying, an Irish saying, that a good friend is the best mirror. So having that friend who's going to be like, dude, you got to stop. You got to slow down. As my major domo Athena says, I'm no good to her if I'm broken. So she knows the warning signs when I'm getting close, and she'll be like, "Dude,
Mm,
you
chill
need
out.
you need to ramp it back a little bit." So that's
Mm,
why having like your kids or your significant other or some of your mates who can tell you, "Dude, you're getting close to, you've been in red zone too long. You need to ease it back a little bit."
mm. That's good. Especially it's such a nice way to build a relationship as well, because you can do it for each other, and it's only going to make you stronger
Yep.
together if you're able to have those kind of conversations.
And if you've got this right person who's like, generally it's not your spouse or significant other, it's like one of these close friends who it's an ebb and flow. When I realize that she's having issues, then I'd be like, "Hey, dude, you're getting close. You need to take a little time.
Mm,
Go get some whiskey, or go listen to some punk rock." Or she'd be like, "Hey, man, look, unplug, go for a run."
mm,
And so having a couple of people in your universe that you can do that with is critical. And one of the worst things is when you've got a friend and you're seeing them where they're at that point or beyond and they're not listening, and it's like, dude, you're breaking yourself. You're past red line, and that's where it hurts, where you can't pull them back and they go right off the edge.
mm. And it all, yeah, it's we see it happen, and it kind of crumbles. And I suppose you learn from experience, but at the same time, it's hard to watch, and it's hard to be a part of.
Yeah, and sometimes, the scars from those experiences never heal.
Mm. You sound like you speak from experience.
Oh yeah, I got lots of scars, both visible and invisible.
Mm. What sort of times have you like been off the edge in places then?
Uh, well, there's a reason why I'm divorced, so we'll just leave it at that.
Okay. Oh yeah, no, that ties together.
And so, but I mean, I've had multiple friends who have lost their battles with addiction and are no
Mm.
longer here. And so I've learned from that to recognize the warning signs and have those difficult conversations with people beforehand. And sometimes, very often, they don't listen.
Mm. Yeah, I've been in similar situations. I know a lot of people, younger age, around 20s, that have been lost to addiction and things like that. It's hard, and I think that ties back into what you were saying earlier. Look for these pearls of wisdom. Look at these experiences and learn, and actually be proactive in learning from them. I think it's really, really important to do so.
Now, Mike, I apologize, but
No, you're fine.
I have to go actually see my doctor to go get my leg worked on.
Yeah,
So,
no problem,
in the
no problem.
last 2 minutes that I have, what would you like to, discuss real quick for your listeners so I
Real
can
quick
make sure
question:
that I'm adding value?
what superpower would you have if you could have a superpower? Best question.
That is the good question, because part of me is like, if I could be like Deadpool and heal instantly, and then it's like, okay, if I could, have
Deadpool.
the time stone and, loop that,
Ooh, that's a nice one.
you know, being omniscient like Franklin Richards would be pretty awesome.
Mm, but the definitive answer.
Yeah, this is tough. You know what? I think that I would want to be like Professor X. I would want
Ooh.
to actually understand what's going on in people's hearts and heads and have the capability to influence them properly.
Absolutely stunning answer. Joe, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I will add links to your. Is there anything you want to say about your book? About the re release?
Yes, yep.
Let's go.
So everyday-excellence.com, on Amazon and all sorts of other places like that.
Perfect. And it's all about little nuggets of wisdom, daily nuggets of wisdom, actionable takeaways. It's very good. I'm very excited to see you. I'm excited to see you on the bestseller list.
Dude, once that happens, we'll sit down, we'll have a pint or three.
Absolutely, I'm so down for that. It sounds beautiful. I'm excited to see your journey, my man. Go to the doctor. Don't let me hold you up anymore.
Thank you, my friend.
It's
Be
been a
excellent
pleasure.
and grow today.
Thank you, and same back at you. Smile at 5 people.
I will.
Okay, it's been a pleasure. Thank you, Joe.